Oldman needed some direction from me, so. Thank you guys so much for being here. I am so thrilled to welcome you to this Q&A with The Darkest Hour. At this point, please join me in welcoming an actor who brings Winston Churchill roaring back to life. He can play everything from a centuries-old vampire to Lee Harvey Oswald to I'm not sure what that was in The Fifth Element, but I loved it. For this role, he has already earned a Critics' Choice and Golden Globe Award. By the way, I wrote this last night. I knew he was going to win a Critics' Choice Award last night. And of course, he has been nominated for a BAFTA and a SAG Award. Please welcome Gary Oldman. Does that just happen everywhere you go? I mean, like, do you ever get tired of that? Like, oh, stop it.
No, never get tired of that. You know, no, I'm feeling the love this season.
Because I saw you at a Starbucks once, a few years ago, and people were clapping. And I remember just thinking, like, that must be so surreal.
Oh, I pay them. They follow me around. Yeah.
Well, I'm still waiting for my check because I joined in and I never saw anything from it, so I'm giving it away for free.
Excuse me, I had some jalapeno.
Oh, really?
So yeah.
I actually want to know about that. You just ate a raw jalapeno, or?
Well, with a hamburger.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That makes sense. Were you over at the counter?
Yeah.
Really? I don't know why that excites me, but Gary Oldman was at the counter, you guys, eating a hamburger. It's not just me, right? That's cool. I mean, do people? I know they must recognize you, but you're such a chameleon. So I mean, like, were the waiters impressed?
I don't really. No, it's weird. I mean, I go everywhere. So, and I think sometimes if people don't expect you to be in Albertsons. You know,
yeah.
At the cheese counter or something, then they kind of look and maybe go, "Is that?" Don't know. I'm sure it isn't. So I do. I mean, normal. I don't know if I'm normal. But I go everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You can play normal.
I can play normal. I haven't played normal for a while,
no.
But yeah.
Well, this is an audience of SAG actors, so I actually always like to start by asking, how did you get your SAG card? Because you're obviously not from here, or you're putting on a fake accent. I don't know.
No, how did I get my SAG card? I know I was very excited when it came through the mail. It would have been around early 90s, State of Grace, that kind of era,
really?
Around there, JFK, yeah.
You had already made quite a few movies by then, but I guess just never in America?
Yeah, or I think I'd made independently financed through the UK, and I'm not kind of sure how that works. It's a strange thing in the union in the UK. You get a provisional card, so you need 40 weeks work to get a card, but you can't work without the card. So that's kind of tricky. So when I first auditioned and went to a repertory theatre in the north of England, I had my provisional equity card, and then you get your 40 weeks. In those days, it was very easy to do because you would go for a whole season. It would be sometimes a 6 or 7 month season. So it was easy to kind of notch up the 40 weeks, but I'm not sure about quite how SAG worked. It was just, you got to join, okay. And one day it came through.
Yeah, they don't really give you a choice, I
No,
guess.
you don't.
Yes.
No,
But you get screeners.
you do get screeners. I still like to see movies at the cinema. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, the one I was working when the Blade Runner film came out, but that was one particularly that I wanted to see in the cinema, and just that sort of collective experience in a dark room with people.
I'm embarrassed to admit I saw it on a plane.
Blade Runner.
Yeah, I know. I just
plane.
couldn't catch
I
it.
wouldn't. No, you wouldn't have got the full effect.
No, probably not.
You missed out.
So, I mean, obviously you can play any role, but you are not the first person who comes to mind when someone says Winston Churchill. And I mean that as a compliment because you are very different physically.
Yeah.
Who came to you with this idea and what was your first reaction?
Well, it would have been. Well, I think the story goes there was a script that came in. I was offered Churchill twice in 1 year, which is very, very strange. And there was one that came in that we were looking at, but I had always said, I mean, apart from the physicality, which was always going to be a huge challenge, I was terrified. I was sort of rather fearful to take it on, and I thought, how am I going to do that? How do you do that? Like Churchill. So I said, no. I will never do it. To the point where there's an old story that is Steve Wynn was traveling on a plane with Frank Sinatra back in the day, and Sinatra was looking through his set, and Steve Wynn sort of leaned over his shoulder and said, "What about, doing that one?" Or, and Sinatra just said to him, "Steve, don't touch the music." And every time the Churchill name was mentioned by my partner and manager, Douglas Abatsky, or my agent, Jim, I had made my mind up that I wasn't going to do it. And I said, "Please, no, don't touch the music. Just please, so I would shut it down. Eric Fellner at Working Title, who we had started our careers together.
Really?
In Sid and Nancy.
No way.
When Working Title was, in its sort of fledgling years, had this Churchill project, and Doug basically said, "Well, let's put our forces together, but we don't have Gary." And then I read this one, and what I think fascinated me was that Churchill had been portrayed many times before, but often it's either what they call the wilderness years or later in life. And this was a very pivotal, defining moment, not only in the world history, but a defining moment in his premiership. And it was specifically an area that had not really been touched on in any great detail. How close we came to, basically surrender. Mm-hmm. They would have dressed it up as peace, but it would have been a capitulation. And so that fascinated me. And so once the seed is planted, mm-hmm. even though you're saying no, I went to a Churchill speech and listened to it, and then tried it out.
Really? You tried the voice?
Yeah, on my iPhone. And I thought, maybe there's something here. So it was just a very... but I was really... not only because so many wonderful actors had played him before.
Just this year, in fact.
Yeah. I saved all my binge watching of The Crown until after we had wrapped. So I didn't look at any other Churchills because I didn't sort of want to be contaminated. You know, you have to sort of tune all that noise out. But it was really it was Doug and my wife Giselle who said, "Are you really going to give up the opportunity to say those words? You know, you'd have to be crazy. And really, what's the worst that could happen? I mean, you could be bad in the part. You could stink. I mean, they're not going to get the acting police, are they? Come on.
Who runs the acting police? I assumed you were on that board.
They've circled me a couple of times, but they haven't. You know, I have no convictions.
Just warnings.
Just a few warnings, yeah.
It's interesting you bring up Sid and Nancy because from what I recall, you made yourself sick making that movie with losing so much weight, and here you are on the opposite end of the spectrum, and you were not going to put on that weight, which I don't blame you, to play Churchill.
Yeah, I'm nearly 60, and I just thought that I would have to gain 70 pounds or more to even remotely get the neck and the jowls. I mean, for me, the one who has done it, the one who sits on a plateau, you know, alone, is obviously De Niro and Raging Bull, and they had even suggested padding to him at the time, and he said, "But what do I do about the neck? What you know, I could put weight on here, or." So I think that, but they didn't have that sort of the wherewithal and the technology that we have that we have now. But it was always going to be a makeup rather than me do that. It's too unhealthy. Even Leonardo DiCaprio has, I guess, he's got something brewing where he has to gain some weight for it, and he came up to me the other night and he said, "Who's that guy who did your makeup? I want to give him a call." You know, so it really could, especially at 60, you're changing your metabolism so dramatically that you got liver, the heart, the kidneys. That, you know, it would be foolish to do it. And if you can do it convincingly another way, and it just so happened that I had worked with Kazuhiro Tsuji about 20-something years ago. I was almost in Planet of the Apes with Tim Burton.
Really?
Yeah. And I had a head cast, and that's as far as it got.
You were going to play an ape?
Yeah, I was going to play an ape. And
why is that funny?
I know. You can't see me as an ape.
Maybe because in the last Planet of the Apes movie, you were so busy killing apes. It's weird.
I was killing apes, but this is before I started killing them. And anyway, it didn't work out. But Kazu's work with apes and Men in Black, and you know, the Nutty Professor, and I mean, he's, you know. And he had he did The Grinch as well, and a few wonderful other things, and then he retired from the movie industry, and now he's a sort of fine artist. He does these hyper-realistic sort of sculptures. But I said to Joe Wright, the only man on the planet who could even remotely pull this off is Kazu. And it wasn't completely contingent on Kazu doing it, but that's who I wanted, you know. And I met him again and seduced him out of retirement. Please come and do this.
I want to hear more about that.
Just, you know, showered him with, just flattered him, and, you know, I love you and I want you to do it, please, you're the best, you're the best, you're the best. And he came and he did it. And I think he sort of lived up to the task. Yeah.
Oh,
I mean,
it's
pretty
amazing.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah.
There is nothing that takes me out of a movie quicker than bad makeup or a bad wig. And it is astonishing, really.
Yeah.
But it doesn't completely work unless you also embody the character. And I mean, where did you even begin with, in a way, you're lucky because there's so much out there, on Churchill, but then that adds an extra pressure because people have something to compare it to.
Well, I was going back to my reticence about doing it. He is arguably the greatest Briton that ever lived. He is so mythologized, an icon that you worry that you can't find the man. How do you get to the guy through it all? And so the revelation for me was the newsreel footage. Specifically at this around this time, or shortly after, and he has been portrayed as a sort of curmudgeon, grumpy, a man born in a bad mood, a very mean sort of grumpy man, sort of shuffling around in monogram slippers and sort of shouting at people, and the footage that I was watching showed someone he was 65, but he had the energy of a man half his age, skipping around, marching ahead, dynamic. He had this sort of very lovely sort of, you can imagine actually in color, it would just be sort of pink. He looked like a baby. He was cherubic, and he had this wonderful twinkle, a naughty schoolboy sort of twinkle in his eyes, and that was the key in for me, because I thought I had not really seen that side of him. His sense of, he had been a soldier in the First World War, and to see footage of him visiting the troops. He was just alive, being in their company. So it was that energy that was coming off him that was the sort of starting point for me to physicalize it. Yeah.
You mentioned sort of your reticence to take on the role. We actually have an audience question. Jordan Butcher. Hey, because he is an iconic character, are there any other roles you've been nervous to play? Or anything you've actually turned down because you were, I don't want to say scared, but scared?
Well, I've turned a few down. Oswald was a weird one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because it was, well, it was weird in as much that it was a piece of casting that came out, dropped from the sky, and Oliver was not on my radar, and then just to get this call from Oliver Stone. But that was interesting because there was very little of Oswald in the script, and Oliver said, I want you to go off and find out who Oswald, who is this man? So they gave me some per diem and a few airline tickets and a couple of contact addresses and phone numbers, as it was in those days, and I became an investigator. It was New Orleans and Dallas, and I would hook up. It all felt very shady, Is Joey there, Joey? Yeah, this is Gary Oldman. Can we, meet me at the, that bar on the corner? Yeah, okay, I'll be there 9 o'clock, So it was a wonderful opportunity. But that again, and wouldn't you know it? You think, oh, Oswald, and then where he was from, and I imagine that he was going to open his mouth, and he was going to sound a bit like that, and I thought, oh, I got this in the bag, I can do this sort of southern thing, kind of McConaughey. You know, and then of course I see him speak, and he's got the weirdest accent in the world. And I work with a very, very good voice coach guy. Some of you may know. Do you know Tim Monarch? He's a wonderful dialect coach, and I played him these tapes and showed him the footage of Oswald, and I said, "Do you know where he's from?" And he went, "Boy, it's a strange accent because it's not quite New Orleans and it's not quite Southern." So I thought it's just my luck to get to get this weird guy. But you know, he sounded a little like Kermit the Frog.
I can hear that.
Yeah, but that was one that was again, really, Oswald, how's that gonna be done? You know, I think I start. I think I start most of the things I work on. That I think it's now become part of my process, where it's I won't be able to do it. This is the one that will trip me up, and it's insecurity. That's it's all of those things that I still carry.
I mean, just out of curiosity, when was the last time you auditioned for something? It has to have been decades, I would think.
1904.
I literally went, gosh, what movie was that?
Yeah, no, funny, talking to JFK, I would always say to people, do you remember where you were when JFK opened? and they'd think for a second. I haven't physically auditioned for a while, but I do meet. I mean, obviously, you do. I go in and meet people, and that is in its way. I met Thomas Alfredson.
For Tinker Tailor?
For Tinker Tailor and Chris Nolan, and you got to see if it's going to happen. I did not know Joe Wright personally.
Oh, really?
No, so he flew out here and we met and obviously hit it off, but no, not physically auditioning.
You must have been good at it, though. I mean, or maybe not. The look you're giving me tells me maybe not.
No, I just get no. So I've messed up auditions. Yeah, I mean, yeah. I mean, it's look. It's a weird thing. You have a career. I've had a very long career and an enviable career. I understand that, and I see that, and I feel very blessed and lucky. I've continued to work and worked with some of the great directors and great actors. Darkest Hours, it's no exception. I'm surrounded by incredible talent, but there have been low times and high times and lean years and good years, and this seems to be at the moment my moment in the sun. It won't last forever. I was a single dad for 10 years and had to bring these kids up. Couldn't work as much as I wanted. I didn't always do the work I wanted to do when I did work, but I got to put food on the table. I got to put a roof over the head. It's all the usual normal things. It's sort of ups and downs, and I've messed up auditions and get nervous, and it doesn't go. It doesn't really. It doesn't go away. And the great, if anything, sometimes it gets worse.
Don't tell us that.
Because of the then you get to a certain level where there's an expectation. And you try and block that out.
Yeah.
But with Winston, I had, it was a unique experience because it was 10, 11 months that I could work on it. I was thinking about it for over a year. We had 4 weeks rehearsal. So you actually got to physicalize and vocalize the character with the people that you're going to be doing it with. And now I knew that I was off book. I knew the whole
script?
Yeah, I knew the whole script like a play before I got there, because it isn't stuff that you can't think about it. You have to kind of know it so well. I'm a big believer. It's not how well you know something, it's how long you've known it. Because then it's like part of your blood. It's your DNA. And then you have it instantly. It's instant recall. And this role required, I knew first of all that I'd be sitting in a makeup chair. And we all had to work with David Malinowski and Lucy Sibuk, who applied and painted and did the whole thing. For 3 hours and 15 minutes, 20 minutes, the makeup was so delicate that we all had to work as a team. So I couldn't be on the phone, I couldn't watch a movie or look at lines, because you need to have your face in certain positions for them to apply it. So I knew that I wasn't going to be like, this isn't the kind of role where you kind of glance at the script and go, yeah, I kind of got it. And then you put it.
Yeah, you can't mess up those famous speeches.
No,
I mean.
so what I did was I really learned it like I would a play, like you would know a play, and that gave me enormous freedom. And if I was sitting in a makeup chair and Joe Wright had come in and said, "Oh, we're doing the Parliament speeches today," instead of, I'd go, "Yeah, okay."
Wow.
Because I had prepped, and there is no excuse for just doing the work. What you're watching. Talent, facility, all those things are in play, but you are watching a lot of homework, and and I was very fortunate to have the time and the rehearsal to prep. Most times, I mean, I've worked with directors who I've met the day of, and I've spoken to them on the phone. I mean, people, you know what it's like. It's now films, the financing is so precarious that a film will quickly happen and come together, and they go, it shoots in 2.5 weeks, and you go, 2.5 weeks? How am I gonna, is it prep or you're on the phone with a director, and you meet over the telephone, and you turn up, and you just hope that you've done, I've learned the lines in my kitchen, and you show them something, and you hope that they're going to dig it.
And that you're on the same page.
Yeah, and then it's a couple of takes and move on. That's what life as a film actor currently is like. So Darkest Hour is an exception, an exceptional experience, because most of it is, it's like rock and roll, you just got to burn from the first bar and go for it, and then that's when the insecurity kicks in, because I sometimes feel that I'm sort of doing shtick, that I'm surviving. I'm trying to save my skin, up there, because that there's a camera on you and your face is going to be this big on a screen, and really a lot of the time you haven't had the time. to do it. So this was an absolute, like a Christmas gift, this thing.
There's actually a question from Chris Zash. Did I pronounce that correctly? Oh, hey. Wanted to know many directors, tell their actors to be smaller and more specific for camera. However, you have a way of making huge choices with the performance without losing authenticity. I think this is a nice way of asking, how do you balance not going over the top or going over the top, in a way that still is true to the character?
Well, I think I've been over the top. I mean, I could say that. I mean, let's be honest here.
I told you I wasn't going to make you scream, everyone.
No, I mean, well,
just backstage.
Well, yeah, but the line, the thing I can always think of is, which is the one you quoted earlier, is bring me everyone. Yeah,
everyone.
The professional.
Everyone?
Yeah, and and that was a joke. I did one take to make Luc Besson laugh, and I went to the sound guy and I just said, hey, this one, turn it down because this one's going to be really loud, and I just screamed, turned and went everyone, and it was obviously it was the print, it was the one that he used,
and now it's a meme.
Yeah, and that is it.
I use it all the time.
But I mean, Churchill has a sense of theatricality. Mm-hmm. I think that someone like Churchill understood self-promotion and branding before it even was a thing. He was this funny little man in these Victorian clothes, and he had a walking cane, and he had this cigar that was always with him, and the Homburg hat. He had an image, and understood that, and there was, so he had a sense of, I think he had a sense of theatre about him, but keeping it. I think if it's coming from a good place, if it's coming from a sincere place, then I think the screen can hold. It can hold the epic, and it can hold the very very small naturalism. I think it can. There's certain characters that I mean. Smiley, for instance, I only actually raised my voice once.
In Tinker Tailor.
And with Churchill, it's. I mean, it's there in the record of the books. He demanded a level of commitment, and if you weren't on the same page with him, he could. Boy, could he tear you a new one. I mean, he could shout and scream, mm-hmm. and reprimand, and then I'm told, be a teddy bear, and then and say, oh, I didn't mean to. You can imagine the pressure he was under. If you think that he took this guy on, he took this racist thug, this tyrant on. He had America were not in the war. Europe and France collapsed. He had 300,000 men that were trapped in Dunkirk, and that was his entire army versus Hitler, who had 5 million soldiers. And so to I mean, how our world order that we've enjoyed for the last 70 years, it arguably is down to one man, and heaven knows what it would have. Heaven knows what it would have looked like had he caved. Mm-hmm. There would be. You can imagine England would have become, as he says, a puppet state. They would have had someone like Mosley, who was a notorious fascist at the time. A lot of the aristocracy, believe it or not, were fascists. They favoured it over communism because they thought they were going to lose their wealth. And so you would have had England would have been fascist. They would have how quickly or slowly the integration would have happened, I don't know. But German language would have been introduced into the schools, and over time it would have been the main language. The swastika, you know, they love that flag, didn't they? They love that swastika. You see that newsreel footage, you know, so that would have been flying everywhere. All of Europe would have been fascist. The English then wouldn't have been in the Mediterranean, we wouldn't have been in North Africa, we wouldn't have been in all those places because we would have actually withdrawn from those places. So the Germans would have got to Russia quicker. They then wouldn't have had that winter. You know, it's
such a domino effect.
The domino effect of it all would have been, it could have been absolutely catastrophic. And imagine the armada that he then would have had, and the troops to come and then come here. Yeah.
I just want to close out with a question from Greg DePetro. Did I get that right? Wants to know if your ability to disappear into a character, do you think that has in any way limited your notoriety? Because like a lot of times people, you know, I would never think that was you up there. Or do you sort of enjoy being able to, you know, go to the counter and eat a burger and not be bothered?
Yeah, whether it's affected. It's, you know what, it's just been, it was always, it was always the fun thing for me, even from the early days of the theatre, that you could dress up and disguise yourself, and sort of the fun of it is becoming other people, you know. I mean, I have said that, you know, acting is a sort of anecdote for self-loathing, you know. I'd much rather be a character than I'm more comfortable being a character, I think, than I am being Gary, so it was. So because of that, I think I've always wanted to change the way I look. You know, Olivier. You know, it was that old story of Olivier, and someone said, you know, you're very weak here, on the bridge, between the bridge and the forehead. And they said it's very weak, you know. Some made some comment about him, and forever he always wore those putty noses. Olivier would always change the shape of his nose because he was always self-conscious and insecure about this area here, you know. Someone maybe said something to me along the way. I remember a director in the theatre saying to me, Gary, he said, he said, Gary, there's something wrong with the face. And I said, what? And he said, I don't know, darling. It's just there's something wrong with your face. And I said, what, the one I'm pulling or the one I was born with? I mean, I didn't know what he meant. But you know, you hear things like that along the way, or and you remember it. So I think a lot of the makeup or whatever is just from. I think it comes from deep-rooted insecurity. Wow. To be honest with you, and then why should a character walk like me, look like me, and sound like me? You know, so immediately I'll hook onto something somewhere, and it could even be Mel Gibson. He used to call me. He had produced Immortal Beloved.
Oh, that's right.
With Icon, he was. Had that had that production company at the time, and he used to call me Mr. Potato Head. But it was. I'm sure you all feel it. Yeah, it's the part of the. I think it's part of the fun of it, even if it's just combing your hair the other way or something. You know, it's a departure.
Sure.
from this.
I do want to remind people this movie is actually still in theaters, still going strong. I want to congratulate you on all the very deserved success for it.
It's been, it's been overwhelming. Yeah.
Well, sincerely, so deserved. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you guys for being a great audience.
Thanks for your time.
My full theater